Hey everyone, good morning. We are going to start right on time because we have a number of different pieces to today's presentation. This is a great crowd for 801. I'm going to ask you to do me the favor of standing up and moving in to the seats to leave some along the aisles so that as people come in, they have a place to sit. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Wow, they did what I said. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to turn things over to our chief resident, Dr. Josh Davis, who's going to kick things off.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I'm Josh Davis. I'm one of the chief medical residents. I have the pleasure of introducing a few people this morning. I'm going to first be introducing Dr. Sanjeev Chopra, who's going to talk about his father, for whom this prestigious lectureship is named. I have a few here, prior speakers. Most notably, this year will be Deepak Chopra, who I'll be introducing shortly thereafter. Dr. Sanjeev Chopra is a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. He's a leading hepatologist, a gifted teacher, and former faculty dean for continuing medical education at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Chopra lectures nationally and internationally about hepatology, leadership, happiness, and living with purpose. He's the recipient of numerous awards, including the AGA Distinguished Educator Award and the Ellis Island Medal of Honor. He's a master of the American College of Physicians. He's written many books, including Leadership by Example, The 10 Key Principles of All Great Leaders, The Big Five, 5 Simple Things to Live a Healthy and Longer Life. His double memoir, written with his brother, Dr. Deepak Chopra, our speaker today, was entitled Brotherhood, Dharma, Destiny, and the American Dream. It went on to become the national bestseller. His latest book, The 2 Most Important Days, How to Find Your Purpose and Live a Healthier and Happy Life, was co-written with Gina Wild and published this past December of 2017. Dr. Chopra.
Thank you very much, Josh, for that very kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to what I think will be a terrific event. I've had the pleasure of listening to Deepak many times over the years, including during my childhood. But it was about 12 years ago that I called Deepak and I said, we should honor our late father, Dr. Kael Chopra, who was an amazing and gifted individual, and endow an annual lectureship at the Beth Deaconess Medical Center and call it the annual lecture in medicine and humanities. So we're not just restricted to topics in medicine. And then I reached out to Dr. Eileen Reynolds and Dr. Mark Zeidel, and they were very gracious in saying, yes, let's do it and make it an annual grand rounds. So our father was a very distinguished cardiologist in India who served his patients. It didn't matter if they were poor and couldn't afford the $2 fee, to the President of India with the same level of respect and dignity and compassionate care. He wrote 2 books for the lay public. One was called Your Life is in Your Hands, more of an autobiography, and the second one called The Magic and Mystery of Love. He also, with 2 of his colleagues, cardiologists, started the Heart Care Foundation of India. And every year in New Delhi, there would be a mela. It's a festival lasting 7 days. About 100,000 people would come through during that week. And every stall had a message about medicine, blood pressure and stress and how to take care of yourself. And it reached probably more than 100,000 people in the last 10 years. He was truly an exemplary physician, philanthropist, and humanitarian. You know, his life and work were exemplary and rooted in the most brilliant and compassionate care, in constant learning. We'd finish dinner and we'd find him sitting at 10 o'clock at night, reading the British Heart Journal, BMJ, Lancet, other journals, textbooks, and so on. So he was constantly learning, and Also rooted in luminous teaching, intellectual curiosity, in philanthropy, in respect and love for humanity. These, I think, are qualities that are so fundamental and at the core of what is performed and celebrated every day by all of you at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So it's really an honor for me to share some reflections with you this morning, and I'm going to turn the podium over now back to Josh.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Deepak Chopra, our distinguished speaker today. Dr. Deepak Chopra, founder of the Chopra Foundation and co-founder of the Chopra Center for Wellbeing, as well as JO.com, is a world-renowned pioneer in integrative medicine and personal transformation, and is a board-certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and metabolism. He is a fellow of the American College of Physicians, a member of the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, and clinical professor in medicine at University of California, San Diego. The World Post and Huffington Post Global Interest Survey ranked Dr. Chopra number 17th influential thinker in the world and number 1 in medicine. Dr. Chopra also serves as an adjunct professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and Columbia Business School at Columbia University. He is the author of more than 85 books, which have been translated into over 43 languages, including 25 New York Times bestsellers. And for this and many other accomplishments, Time magazine has described Dr. Chopra as one of the top 100 heroes and icons of the century. We're delighted to have him here to speak at Grand Rounds today as part of the Chopra Lectureship in honor of his father. And on a personal side note, my mother happens to be a very big fan, so she's very excited that I have the pleasure of introducing you today. So could you please all join me in welcoming Dr. Deepak Chopra.
So it used to be, I'm a big fan, then my mother is a big fan, and these days my grandmother is a big fan. Time flies by. I used to walk these streets in 1971 as a new fellow at the Deaconess Joslin program, which was also part of the Leahy Clinic program. So great memories. Good to be here, back here. And I'm not going to say too much about my father right now. Sanjeev did that and made me feel very emotional. So one thing I do remember, that he was such a great clinician that he could tell you the PR interval by auscultation, the distance between the fourth heart sound and the first heart sound. He was that good. In any case, I see that I have 50 minutes, Sanjeev told me, to help us solve the mystery of our existence, so I'll get right to it. About 6 years ago, when my grandson, who was 11 yesterday, when he was 5, my grandson is a child from my son. He's half Chinese and half Indian. We call him the Chindian. So I was traveling around the country, and my son, hi Shekhar, please take a seat. My son and my grandson picked me up from the airport. And as we were getting our luggage, my grandson turned to me and he said, Dada, which is the Indian word for grandfather on the father's side. He said, Dada, what is dark energy? Which is a strange question coming from a 5-year-old. So I said, what do you know about dark energy? And he said, it flows through the night sky. Very poetic and actually quite true. I said, what else do you know about it? He said, it's 70% of the universe. So now I'm kind of confused, a 5-year-old asking these questions and actually knowing these answers. So we get out of the airport and we're driving by Santa Monica. I roll down the window. We're looking at the ocean. We can smell it. And he turns to me and he said, "How did they make the ocean?" I said, who make the ocean? He said, "They." I said, "No, that's a very unscientific, vague question. What do you mean by they?" So I can see his little mind thinking. And then he reframed the question. He said, "How did the ocean get made?" So I said, "It got made the same way as the earth. You know, we're a little piece of dust in the junkyard of infinity. And the earth came about as a result of certain collisions in the cosmos. And the ocean is part of that." And then I turned to him and I said, "Do you know how many planets there are in the solar system?" And he said, "Well, if you count Pluto, there are 9. But a lot of people don't think Pluto is a real planet, so then there would be 8. I said, "And where did the solar system come from?" He said, "From the galaxy." I said, "And where did the galaxy come from?" He said, "The universe." And I asked him, I said, "Where did the universe come from?" And he said, "From another dimension." So by now I'm totally confused. I'm thinking to myself, who's this 5-year-old kid? You know, and you know, in India we believe in things like reincarnation, which is another recycling idea. Everything recycles. So I'm thinking to myself, who's this kid? And you know, Galileo, Copernicus, Einstein. So I said, "Krishu, how do you know all this?" And he said, "It's on my Pokemon." If you don't know what Pokemon is, you're not part of the zeitgeist. So why do I share this story? If you go on Google or you go on the internet and you ask the following question, you can try it afterwards. What are the open questions in science today? The first open question in science is, what is the universe made of? Presumably everything is made of something. This microphone seems to be made of plastic, and this is wood. This is mostly carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. So what's the universe made of? And why is that an open question? That's the number one open question in science, by the way. There are 150 questions that science is struggling with, but the number one question is, what is the universe made of? And the reason that's an open question is that precisely what my grandson said, 70% of the universe is a mysterious mathematical construct called dark energy, which Einstein described as the cosmological constant. It's a force which is the opposite of gravity, which is expanding the universe faster than the speed of light. So even now, as we stand here, as I stand here, you sit here, the cosmic horizon, which is the farthest distance from where we are right now, is 47 billion light years away from us. And galaxies are moving across it faster than the speed of light. Even though the universe is only 14 billion years old, the horizon of the universe is 47 billion light years away. By the time light gets from there to where we are, our solar system will have exhausted its thermonuclear energy and built itself up into the heat death of absolute zero. Okay. What is this force? No one knows. Einstein called it my biggest mistake, he said, and then he retracted later, which is a mathematical idea that he had, but now substantiated by observations that the space between galaxies is expanding faster than the speed of light, the space between. So we live in the Milky Way galaxy. Right next door is something called Andromeda, and then next door to that is another galaxy called Virgo, And after that, these days, cosmologists have stopped giving names to galaxies. They just give them numbers. Why? Because it is estimated that there are 2 trillion galaxies. 2 trillion galaxies. The Milky Way galaxy has 100 billion stars. There are 600 sextillion stars. I don't know how to write that. It's 600 followed by innumerable zeros. And there are uncountable trillions of planets. Uncountable trillions of planets. So today there are departments of what are called astrobiology at MIT, and other places, Harvard and Columbia and other places, where scientists are looking for life on other planets based on estimations of biosphere. Where is the planet in relationship to its sun? It has to be in what is called the Goldilocks zone. If it's too near, it's too hot, too far, too cold, has to be within this range to harbor life. And it's believed that might be, according to mathematical calculations of biospheres, there could be 60 billion habitable planets in our own galaxy. These are the estimates of current science. In any case, the space is expanding faster than the speed of light. The galaxy itself is held together by gravity. And it seems that most of the gravity is not from what we know as regular matter. So of the 30% of the universe that remains after you count out dark energy, 30%, 26% of that is dark matter. And dark matter is so called because it's invisible. And the reason it's invisible is that it's not atomic. And everything we know as matter is atomic, the periodic table. Your body is made of atoms. This microphone is made of atoms. Stars and galaxies and planets are made of atoms. But whatever dark matter is, it's not atomic. So it doesn't reflect light, absorb light, emit light. In fact, has no interaction with light. And so we can't see it. Why do we call it matter? Because it accounts for most of the gravity in the universe. And it is 26% of the universe. Now, of course, there are candidates for what could be the particles of dark matter. The latest candidate is something called weakly interacting massive particle, or WIMP. And there are all kinds of experiments going on underneath the surface of the Earth to look for evidence of this matter, but none has been found. And it's unlikely that it will be, because how do you find something that doesn't interact with you at all? So that leaves 4% of the universe, which is atomic. Of that, 99.99% is invisible interstellar dust. So the visible universe is 0.01%. That's the 2 trillion galaxies I'm talking about. 2 trillion galaxies, 700, 600 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets is 0.01%. The rest is unknown and probably unknowable. So now we have this 0.01% of the universe, which is atomic, but we have a problem with that too, because atoms are particles and particles are smaller particles. And when you finally get to the source of particles, they seem to have a schizophrenic existence. When particles are interacting with each other or being observed, they behave like particles, which have units of mass and energy. But when they're not being observed and not interacting with other particles, they have wave-like characteristics. Particles become waves. They evolve into waves. And unlike particles, which have units of mass and energy, waves have none of the above. If you ask scientists, what are these waves made of? Because the waves of the ocean are made of water. The waves that are carrying sound from me to you right now are air molecules. What are the waves that make the universe made of? And the best answer you'll get is they're made of possibilities. And so if you ask mathematicians or physicists, possibilities, where do they exist? They'll say in Hilbert space. Say, what is Hilbert space? It's an infinite space with infinite dimensions that houses the wave function. Where is it? Shut up and calculate. If you want tenure, you want to become a professor, you don't ask those questions. You just do calculations. Bottom line, what's the universe made of? Today's best answer is, it's made of nothing. So what is this nothingness from where we all come? You, I, galaxies, stars, our planet. The first open question in science. The second open question in science, which will be more interesting to you, I think, is what is the biological basis of consciousness? So why is this such a difficult question? Because this, if you again go on the internet and you type out hard problem of consciousness, and you'll see the controversy about the biological basis of consciousness. The answer is not known. In fact, we don't know if there's a biological basis for consciousness at all. So the hard problem of consciousness is that understanding the brain cannot give us a clue to how we experience that which we call physical reality, including the experience of our own body, or that which we call our mind. So right now, you're looking at me, and what's happening is photons are bouncing off this body. They're going to your eyes. The photons themselves have no color. They have no mass. They're invisible. We can't see those photons. Ultimately, they end up in your retina, where they cause an electrochemical activity. And then there's an action potential that goes to the brain. And then there's electrochemical activity in the brain. And you see me. You see this table. You see your own body. You see this room. If you go outside, you see the Milky Way galaxy. How does that happen? How does electrochemical activity in this 3-pound piece of meat create the experience that we call life? The experience of our own body, the experience of the world, and also the experience of our own thinking. If I ask you right now to imagine a beautiful sunset on the ocean, try it. You have an experience. All there's in your brain is an electrochemical activity. Okay, there's no sunset in your brain. There's no picture. There's no color. There's no sound. Everything that you call experience, whether it's the taste of a strawberry or a beautiful sunset, or the fear of death, or a sexual orgasm, anything that you can call an experience, ultimately is an electrochemical activity in the brain, and that's called a neural correlate of experience, or a neural correlate of consciousness, short acronym NCC. These are neural correlates of consciousness, but they don't explain consciousness. They don't explain any experience, whether we call that a perceptual experience or a mental experience or a emotional experience. Anything that's a sensation, an image, a feeling, a thought, a perception cannot be explained by mere action potentials going to the brain and electrochemistry. That's why it's called the hard problem. There is no explanation for any experience. Furthermore, consciousness itself is invisible. You can't see consciousness, although without consciousness, there would be no seeing. You can't smell it or taste it or touch it, but without it, there would be no experience of what we call perceptual experience, sensory experience. being invisible, it is also formless. It's also made of nothing. So we have two big problems in science. What's the universe made of? Nothing. What's consciousness made of? Nothing. What is existence made of? Nothing. Why does it look like this? What's consciousness made of? Nothing. How does it give me the experience of this, or my own thoughts? These are huge problems that we are trying to solve. And today, this is a collaborative effort of neuroscientists, cosmologists, biologists, philosophers, and on and on. And the mysteries remain totally unsolved. So if you are a deep historian and you go back to the history of humans, you'll see that about 30, 40,000 years ago, there was something called the cognitive revolution. Up until then, there were 8 different types of humans. We are Homo sapiens, there's Homo habilis, Neanderthals, Floroenses, on and on, 8 different types of humans. We call ourselves Homo sapiens, which means the wise ones, that name we were humble enough to give ourselves. And all these humans had a rudimentary language till one species, us, developed a language for telling stories, which I'm doing right now. Okay, everything we do is a story. Everything we say. Shekhar would appreciate that. So that happened 30, 40,000 years ago. 12,000 years ago, there was the second revolution, which is called the agricultural revolution. So we stopped being hunter-gatherers. And then only 500 years ago, we had the scientific revolution. And actually, in real earnest scientific revolution, we'd say started about 300 years ago with Copernicus and Galileo and so on. So how have the stories changed since then about the nature of our existence? May I have the first slide, please? Something happened. Okay, so no. Can you move the slide forward for me? Okay. No, that's the last slide. Okay, while he's fixing the slide, the stories have changed, as I said. The first story about the existence of the universe, yeah, that's good. How do I move it forward? This one? Yes. Okay. So that's the first story, right? The divine universe, God created the universe. And that story is about only 5,000, 6,000 years old, by the way. Not just biblical times, but other cultures over the world had the same story in different ways of expression. That story changed with the appearance of Isaac Newton, who was very religious. In fact, he was a biblical scholar. But he also said that the universe is created and ruled by fixed laws of nature, known through human reason and logic. And around his time, there were other great luminaries, philosophers, scientists. And this was the beginning of, as I said, the scientific revolution. And one of the most famous of them is Leibniz, who also described calculus, and René Descartes that promoted the philosophy of dualism. There's mind and there's matter. And the mind and the world of spirit can be taken care of by theologians, at that time the Pope. And the physical world is the responsibility of the scientists. It's a good compromise. But as you will see, dualism doesn't hold any water anymore because it violates some very basic laws, including the laws of thermodynamics. And this system of thought continued till I'm having problems with the. I'll just use that if that's all right. This. Okay, so is it? Okay, so I should just press this. Okay, so this is the classical universe as described by Newton, but originally by Kepler. Explains the laws of motion and gravity, and all these laws, which are referred to as Newtonian laws, are still in operation when we fly a jet plane or drive an automobile, or even when you send a rover to Mars or land people on the moon. These laws work. And it wasn't till Einstein's appearance that they were questioned. And Einstein came up with two theories. One is the special theory of relativity in 1905, and then the general theory of relativity in 1915. As you know, recently, with the discovery of gravity waves, the general theory of relativity was also validated, and these are revolutionary ideas. Mass and energy are the same. The speed of light is constant for every observer, every frame of reference, and gravity is the curvature of space and time. And without these theories, we wouldn't know anything about black holes or the nature of the cosmos. Unfortunately, a few years around the same time, so again, Einstein's theories, the relativistic universe is very dynamic, constantly evolving, and it's in this framework, space-time, energy, matter, information are all interdependent. The problem with this theory is that along the same time as Einstein was coming up with the theory of relativity, there was another revolution going on, which we call the quantum revolution, looking at the micro-universe. And basically, the quantum revolution described the universe in terms of not massive particles, but microparticles, which have a completely different behavior. In that microparticles can be in two locations at the same time. There's something called quantum entanglement, ideas of teleportation, ideas of inseparability all creep up when you start to look at quantum mechanics, and the calculations work. So today, 70% of our economy is based on the mathematics of quantum mechanics. Whether you're using the internet or sending me a text message or downloading a movie, all this is possible because we understand the calculations of quantum mechanics. But what does it all mean? If you ask the question, what do these calculations tell us about reality? You'll find that these are some of the ideas, okay, which I've mentioned. And if you ask scientists, what does this really mean? What are the interpretations of quantum mechanics? And you go to Wikipedia, this is what you'll find. There are over 20 interpretations. And no one can seem to agree on the right one, which means, again, that we have a problem. It means no one knows what's really going on. As Sir Arthur Eddington, the person who actually validated the general theory of relativity, said something unknown is doing we don't know what. Okay, until recently the Copenhagen interpretation was the most popular, but now there are many, many, many theories. that are competing, and I'll just list them here. And eternal inflation, superstring, many worlds, multiverse, M theory. But there's no data or observation that is possible when you get to what is called Planck scale, Planck time, Planck scale of length. You can't have any data because the laws of physics and mathematics don't exist at that level. And certainly you can't get to what was there before the Big Bang. So empirical data right now from research about the nature of the universe has come to a dead end. This is a diagram from one of the authors of the double dark theory of the universe, Joel Primack. And basically what you see is the new order of the universe, 70% dark energy, 25% dark matter, invisible atoms, and then right at the top, 0.01% of the visible universe. And if we were to kind of create a metaphor for the cosmic chocolate cake, then most of the chocolate cake is invisible. Right at the top, the cherry at the top of the chocolate cake is sentience or consciousness, which makes it possible for us to think about these matters or make observations. And if you looked at the tiniest pinch of cinnamon right on the top of the cherry, which you can't actually see right now, that is consciousness, that is sentient life, without which, human sentient life, without which we wouldn't be able to have grand rounds at BI and talk about these matters. So, is there a solution? Today I'm going to offer you what is being discussed as the possible solution. Since random events are not enough to explain the exquisite fine-tuning of the laws of nature, the rise of life on Earth, many have proposed that the universe is a conscious being. I recently wrote an email to Freeman Dyson, who is now 93 years old at Princeton, one of the only living physicists, who was a colleague of Albert Einstein. And I asked him about this principle, the anthropic principle. Is the universe conscious? And he answered by saying, and I have that letter for my grandson now, kept safely in my will for Christian when he grows up, from Freeman Dyson. And he says, there are three riddles that have puzzled me all my life. One is a universe fine-tuned for mind and life. The second is the unpredictable movement of atoms. He didn't say random, he said unpredictable. Fine distinction. Random means inherently random. Unpredictable means it looks random, but it's building a universe. The unpredictable movement of atoms. And third is our own consciousness. A universe fine-tuned for life and matter. Our own consciousness, and the unpredictable movement of atoms. He said, I don't know the answers to these riddles, but I have a feeling they're connected. So that's where we are today. And based on these ideas, I would like to propose a very ancient idea that comes from Eastern wisdom traditions, where consciousness and universe are synonymous. So in Sanskrit, consciousness is referred to as Brahman and universe is referred to as Brahmand. So there are two different states of existence or being. Furthermore, Eastern wisdom traditions say that that which we call physical reality, that which we call the physical universe, the one that we experience is a species-specific experience in consciousness. It's not the experience of a dolphin or a snake that uses infrared to navigate. I was recently reading about this very interesting butterfly called The painted lady. Anybody hear about the painted lady? So this butterfly, she smells through her antenna, she hears through her wings, she tastes through her feet, and she has 30,000 lenses in different shapes and different ways organized so to give her a kaleidoscope of experiences of colors you and I cannot imagine. What is the experience of that painted lady? What is the experience of a bat that knows the world through the echo of ultrasound? A honeybee that knows ultraviolet as an experience and does a waggle dance to go and search for nectar. In other words, there is no such thing as a physical universe or even a physical body. These are human constructs. Mind, body, and world are unified experience in human consciousness. And there is only consciousness and its excitations. So, if I were to ask you right now, what is this? Microphone. What's this? Okay. What's this? These are human constructs. If you were a baby, and had no language, you would experience a color, a shape, a smell, a texture, maybe a noise, and then you were told, this is a lectern, this is a microphone, this is a hand, this is a body. All you were experiencing was excitations of consciousness that we call perceptual activity. Perceptual activity is a mental activity. You have to focus, hold attention. If I ask you, think of the color red. Think of the color red. Now you have an experience. How did you do that? How did you change awareness into that color? Or if you're listening to me and somebody at the back of the room calls out your name, you stop listening to me, you listen to that person out there. Consciousness is constantly modulating itself, modifying itself as that which we call experience. So before you can call this an object, it's an experience. And before it is an experience, it's a fluctuation of perceptual activity that is registered in consciousness as sound, taste, smell, texture, form, color, etc. Consciousness is interacting with its own self to create what we call the experience of both the subject of experience and object of experience. In consciousness literature, these are called qualia. Qualia are qualities of experience. The color red is a qualia. The taste of wine is a qualia. Imagination and image is a qualia. Sound is a qualia. And these qualities ultimately give us ideas about everyday reality. The reality we experience as humans, as upright thinkers, looking at the sky, is a totally human experience and a human construct based on excitations in consciousness. And fundamental reality is the awareness, the excitations of which are the experience of both the observer and the observed in what is called the timeless moment of now. The past is experienced now, the future is experienced now, and now itself is ungraspable. What happened to this morning? It's gone. What happened to 5 minutes ago? It's gone. What happened to a minute ago? It's gone. What happens to these sentences by the time you hear them? They're gone. So the German philosopher Wittgenstein said, we are asleep. Our life is a dream. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. And this was exactly what the Buddha said. He said, our lifetime is as transient as autumn clouds. To watch the birth and death of beings is like looking at the movements of a dance. A lifetime is like a flash of lightning in the sky, rushing by like a torrent down a steep mountain. That's a qualia experience in consciousness. So consciousness is that where we have all experience. Consciousness is that in which all experience occurs. All experience is known, but now I'm suggesting something else. All experience is made out of consciousness. A sensation is made out of consciousness. Feel your body right now. Feel your breath right now. That's a sensation. And it requires consciousness. It's a modified form of consciousness. A color red is a modified form of consciousness. All sensations, all sensory experiences are modified forms of consciousness. Consciousness conceives, governs, constructs, and becomes what we call everyday reality, including that which we call our mind and that which we call our body. And this creates the subject-object split. And this is all of experience. All experience is just this. If you want to remember the acronym, it's SIFT, S-I-F-T. Sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. That's all experience. Mental experience, emotional experience, perceptual experience. That's it, SIFT. The rest is a human story. Systems of thought have existed ever since the cognitive revolution, mythological, religious, theological, philosophical, scientific. But these are constructs. These are human constructs, and no construct has a privileged position for the person embedded in that construct. Everyday reality that we call reality is a human construct. These excitations of consciousness that we call mind, body, and world are in time, but awareness itself, which is exciting itself as the experience of observer and observed, is not in time. So when we address big issues like birth, death, body, mind, brain, universe, God, as we usually think of God, stars, galaxies, Big Bang, anything that has been given by names itself by humans, itself a label, are constructs. And freedom lies only in understanding fundamental reality behind constructs. Why is this important? Why is this important? Why is it important to talk about this in a hospital that looks after people who are suffering, which is the essential dilemma of human existence. Animals suffer, but they don't have the kind of existential suffering that we have, that we ask ourselves. At a certain point, if you're aware, you ask yourself, what does it all mean? What is the meaning of it? What is the meaning of birth and death and this existence? And so we go back to some of the greatest thought leaders of all time, including the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many others who said human suffering comes from not knowing the true nature of existence. It comes from not knowing who you are. You confuse yourself with an experience that you call the body-mind and the perceptual world. It comes from grasping that which cannot be grasped, an experience that is over even as it arises, the dream. It comes from clinging and attachment and fear of impermanence. It comes from identifying with a socially induced hallucination called the ego, and it comes from the fear of death. Because as humans, and particularly as physicians, you know that death is stalking all of us, your patients and yourself. The prince of death is behind you. You look again, he's closer. We are all on death row. The only uncertainty is the method of execution and the length of reprieve. So is there a solution? And the great luminaries of all time have told us what now philosophers and scientists are saying, is that you are a fundamental being, a consciousness, an awareness that is not in time. This is the essential message of every religion and philosophy, and the essential code by which humans live, that there is meaning and purpose to our existence. So, as I am nearing the conclusion of this lecture, I'd like to try an experiment with all of you. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give you the answer before I ask you the question. The answer is yes. Okay. So here's the question. Are you aware right now? Can you be a little more enthusiastic? I mean, you are aware. That's why you're listening to me, right? And you can answer the question. Are you aware right now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question, but this time, don't answer it till I lift my hand. Promise? Are you aware right now?
Yes.
So, are you aware is a thought. It's an experience. The answer, yes, is a thought. These thoughts come and go, just like perceptions come and go, experiences come and go. Everything comes and goes. Only awareness is the timeless factor in every time-bound experience. Awareness is all there is, modifying itself as sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, and then constructs out of that our mind, body, universe. And then we can go further, down the rabbit hole. Your biology is not the source of consciousness, it's an experience in consciousness. Your mind is not the source of consciousness, it's an experience in consciousness. So finally, I'm going to ask you the same question. This time, don't answer it. Just be aware of that which is having this experience right now. Be aware of that which is having the experience of your own body, which is having the experience of this room, which is having the experience of me, and which is also having the experience of the mind. So when I ask you, are you aware? Just be aware. Are you aware? The great Sufi poet Rumi said, God's language is silence. Everything else is poor translation. Thank you.
We have some time for questions, comments. Yes, go ahead.
What can you say about scientific or technological progress?
Repeat the question.
What can you say about scientific or technological progress? Well, it's the best story, right? I took a plane to get here. I couldn't have done that without science. But is it reality? Is this a virtual reality? And in fact, I'm very happy that Shekhar is here. He's a visiting scholar at MIT, working on virtual reality, augmented reality. These are extensions of the first virtual reality. Anil Seth, who's a cognitive scientist in England, and I would recommend his TED talk to you if you want to see it. Anil Seth from Sussex, England. In his talk, he proposes that what we call everyday reality is a controlled hallucination produced by the brain. So I asked him, I said, if everyday reality is a controlled hallucination of the brain, then what is the appearance of the brain? Is that also a hallucination produced by other brains? He didn't have an answer. You can't explain a dream by another dream. So scientific progress is the extension of virtual reality that already exists.
Could you touch on the soul as a commentary of your conversation today?
Yes, I purposely avoided the word soul because it has religious connotations, but what the heck. So the soul is a conditioning of consciousness through experience. You have different experiences than I have, but we were born with a consciousness that was relatively not conditioned. Now, if you go into theories of consciousness, and consciousness is non-local, and like everything else, space-time, energy, information, and matter, it recycles, then that's what it is. The soul is a conscious being that is recycling as mind, body, and the unified experience of the world. But it's not in time. So that's why the Upanishads, when they talk about the soul, say water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. It's ancient, it's unborn, and therefore is not subject to death. That which is born must die.
Thanks for this fascinating, brilliant lecture. Most of the people in this audience, their awareness in about half an hour is going to be of a human being in pain with biological things going on. Could you say a little bit more about how the awareness and memory of this lecture might actually, could influence, help be relevant to the experience of responsibility for this person in pain or nausea or whatever in front of us?
Dr. Lackland, thank you for asking that question, because that is actually the message of healing. The word healing comes from the word whole. And the word whole and the word healing and the word health and the word holy are the same word. So healing is the return of the memory of wholeness. As physicians, as I would dare say, more than physicians, as healers, it is our duty to love our patients. Because once we understand consciousness, we understand that it's the common denominator between your experiences and my experiences, even though my experiences may be different from yours, but it's still the common denominator. When I feel what you feel, that is what is called empathy. And when I have empathy, then there's a desire that comes to alleviate your suffering. That's called compassion. And when there is compassion, there is love. And when there is love, there is healing. Why? I mean, even biologically, today we know that inflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation, is more than 90% of all chronic illness. Only 5% of disease-related gene mutations are fully penetrant. The rest are epigenetically modified. So we know that one end of the spectrum of disease is inflammation, however we define it in all its connotations, and the other is extreme, profound peace that comes from love. And when there's love, there's homeostasis. I mean, it took us a long time to figure this out. We figured out the biology of stress for 60 years now. You know, adrenaline, cortisol, inflammatory products, biological markers, all the things that go with stress. How about the experience of love and compassion? What is the biology of that? And the more we are looking at that, the more scientists, neuroscientists are looking at that. Rudy Tanzi, my co-author in 3 books, it seems like love is perfect homeostasis. Now, I'm not talking about love as a mere sentiment or emotion, but love as the ultimate truth that you and I are the same being having a different experience. That's love. And physicians, if you love your patients, you will alleviate their suffering, no matter what drug you give them.